I'm going to go to this a little later on tonight. Very excited I am. To find out what they've got to say. I'm sure it'll be remarkably different from what they've said over the last 8 weeks. In saying that, one significant piece of news today we did get is that, breaking with tradition somewhat, the new Prime Minister, and indeed the outgoing Prime Minister, will go to Balmoral and not Buckingham Palace to see the Queen.
Yes, ever since Queen Victoria ascended to the throne in 1837, every single Prime Minister has become Prime Minister by visiting Buckingham Palace, except for one in 1908.
Where did he go to?
Asquith went somewhere in the south of France.
Biarritz.
In order to meet the King. But no, so this is a break with tradition, although there's nothing constitutional about where the monarch has to be. It's just that the monarch is the person who appoints the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister is the person who carries the confidence of the House of Commons. Clearly, the Conservatives have a large majority in the House of Commons. Whoever carries the confidence, whoever wins the Conservative Party leadership election carries automatically the confidence of the majority of the House of Commons due to that election victory back in 2019, and that's whom the Queen will appoint to be her Prime Minister. So yes, quite a lot of travelling for Wednesday. We'll learn the result on the Tuesday. No doubt, probably, I wouldn't be surprised if the eventual winner chooses to scuttle up to Scotland immediately after that announcement on the Tuesday, so that they, whoever she may be, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, will be able to come back down to Downing Street to try and give that first address on the steps of Downing Street in the light, because it's going to be pretty much a race against time to get to that door and be able to say something, not in darkness.
Indeed, or indeed in the rain, because after a summer when it's been perfectly dry, they expect us to stand all next week when it starts to rain for the autumn. In saying that, is the final hustings tonight. I was slightly jesting earlier. Actually, was I really jesting? What are we going to hear tonight? It's in London, it's the final one, but yet again, we're probably just going to hear the same arguments over and over again.
Dare I say it, that Rishi Sunak will say his mother owned a chain of chemists? Dare I say it, that Liz Truss will say that she's a plain-speaking Yorkshire woman? I mean, all of these phrases that we've heard again and again in these hustings will no doubt be trotted out, but we have heard some releases from these campaigns ahead of these hustings. Rishi Sunak focusing on his ground campaign, saying that we should ignore these polls that are obviously very much against him and say that he's got a good ground game, and whoever he's met when he's gone around the country, and he has visited a huge number of Conservative constituency associations. He's been focusing on that. Meanwhile, Liz Truss has been pushing her policy agenda. No new policy, but speaking about how the specific policies she has already announced apply to London. Of course, this is the London hustings. There's been one in every region of the United Kingdom. This is the last one tonight. And Liz Truss especially focusing on some of these investment zones, these low-tax, low-regulation zones, saying that she'll create a number of them in and around London. And a really interesting point about these zones, looking back over what her campaign has said in the last month or so, is it's not just low tax and perhaps deregulation, but specifically looser planning controls in these zones that could help build houses. So a really interesting point here is if London gets sort of in central London some of these development zones, you may see different planning regulations in inner London compared to in the Tory shires. And that might be a very clever way for Liz Truss to build houses in Labour constituencies and keep the same planning restrictions we currently have in Tory constituencies.
Fascinating stuff, but we are not, very quickly Tom, are we? We're not really expecting an upset, are we, next week in terms of who's going to win? Is it undoubtedly Liz?
With the risk of getting egg on my face, and indeed...
or indeed eating a hat.
Or indeed eating a hat, but I'll tell you what, if I get egg on my face now, so will every single pollster in this country, so will every single pundit. I'm not sure there is a single person who credibly says that Rishi Sunak really stands a chance, unless something has gone horrifically wrong with every single member of the British Polling Council. It's Liz's for the losing.
Indeed, I'm not even entirely sure that even Rishi Sunak thinks he might win.